This is Sybert signing into Red Alert 3 on the map Fire Island 4, a 1v1 and an AVS in the south, playing the orange Soviets. This is Harlen. And in the north, playing the blue allies, this is opShijiao. Looks like it's going to be an airfield first for this allied player. We'll see if the Vindicator actually finds any kills. Harlen is probably going to be predicting this on, and yeah, it's going to be refinery into war factory into a flak cannon. So he is sort of predicting this. Engineer going to be coming in. Harlen does save the engineer. This MCV, be careful. Okay, the Riptide and the MCV can both get locked down here. A second Riptide is going to be showing up, so hopefully the second... There is no second terror drone. Okay. All right, so opShijiao is okay here. If a second terror drone shows up before the second Bullfrog, or before the second Vindicator bombing run shows up, Vindicators clean up pretty much everything there. Vindicators coming in. They will drop their bombs. They find some heavy damage against that Vindicator, and there's going to be the multi-gunner turret to finish off this location. Immediate sell of that refinery. Not a big surprise there from Harlen. He was worried about opShijiao's turret push, and he sells off that. Oh, sells off his MCV as well. Okay, so he is in full-on survival mode. He's got 3K in the bank and 2 refineries to show for it. He might be able to force this MCV array. This might also force out a multi-gunner turret really close to this engineer. Yeah, he's just going to go for the close multi-gunner turret, but he also packed up the MCV, so it was kind of a 2-for-1 there. Packed up his MCV and deployed his multi-gunner turret in a not very advantageous position. As long as the war factory is here, hope springs eternal that Harlen can turn this around, but opShijiao has got a really solid setup. 3 refineries plus an oil derrick. His Vindicators were already produced, and he's been able to keep them alive for this whole game, so he hasn't been rebuilding Vindicators this entire time. Actually, these other Vindicators could have killed off that second hammer tank, which possibly would have been more value than just going for the walls. We'll see what that Riptide is really able to accomplish. The answer, not a whole lot. It's not easy to do, but it is possible. 1 Vindicator does end up going down. 2 total have been eliminated. And there's actually going to be a Spectrum Tower and a Cryo Shot coming in. It's going from bad to worse here for Harlen. Loses another Bullfrog, but he does manage to kill the Vindicator, so at least the aircraft he doesn't have to worry about anymore. Switches over to the Leech Beam to get some healing back on these tanks. Will be able to start pressuring that MCV in the middle of the map as well. And opShijiao losing his aircraft is a big problem for stopping this push. The Riptides getting thinned out. A couple of them have... No, these are actually just Javs walking across the map, and the hammer tank will go the crush on them. They will not be able to laser lock down that reactor, and unfortunately for opShijiao, he's got this extra harvester there just sitting there doing nothing. Bit of a misclick or an accidental harvester there, unless he really was trying to expand with it manually. Get out some cryocopters without having to move his MCV. Riptide's moving back into position, but Riptides with no cryocopters and with no Vindicators to support them have a really hard time actually breaking these hammer tanks. They can try and escape off to the water to extend their lives. Spectrum Tower gets deployed. Another one is finally here for opShijiao. Having an Air Force would make this defense like the snap of his fingers so easy, but having no Air Force gives Harlen so much agency and so much power in this position. Vindicator should... No, he's not actually rebuilding any of them. So even though he's got a bit of space to get the Vindicators into the air to help the Riptides deal with these hammer tanks, or to even knock down this hammer tank that's up here, he hasn't rebuilt any Vindicators. He's not going to take that risk. Hammer tanks moving into position, trying to split up, kill off harvesters, and Harlen has He's brought another couple of hammer tanks here. He can't necessarily crack the front of the base. These 4 power plants are an obvious weak spot, but another Spectrum Tower is going to get deployed. A Cryo Shot is going to get deployed as well. Are they just going to try and jump on this Spectrum Tower? They are. The double vet hammer tank does go down. The rest of the hammer tanks will be able to stand up against this Spectrum Tower. Nice switch to the leech beam for one of those hammer tanks, and the replacement tower is only a quarter of the way done. opShijiao may be at a tipping point here where too many dominoes have fallen. No aircraft and no turrets on the ground to be able to stop these hammer tanks mean that the Riptides have such a hard time clearing them out. 3 power plants have gone down. Harlen with more than enough power, and opShijiao on the verge of having his lights turned out. He is going to sell off his tier structure there, his defense bureau, but he is going to also lose the power plant, so the last Spectrum Tower goes offline for a couple of moments there. The heroic hammer tank does get blasted, so it will be eliminated, and a second hammer tank will go down right on the edge of range there. The hammer tank's getting eliminated by the Spectrum Tower, and suddenly Harlen goes from nearly winning the game to a horror show, and he still hasn't rebuilt his MCV. He's just pushing out those tanks one at a time. He is going to be able to get that power plant at the back of the base, but it looks like opShijiao has sold off almost everything else. Only this refinery is keeping him in the game with that oil derrick on the north side of the map. If that could be targeted by Harlen, that would be a good place to take some value away from opShijiao. A couple of peacekeepers are going to be getting eliminated. This hammer tank could theoretically go heroic just on peacekeepers alone. I'm not sure if he's close enough to actually go heroic on those 2 remaining peacekeepers. Only 1 Vindicator was produced. No, he did get a second Vindicator, but not a lot of bombing runs before the airfield gets eliminated. Another hammer tank does go down. A horror show for both players. Okay, the airfield is up. Man, if those Vindicators had been able to get off more than like 1 bombing run, it would have been game over for Harlen, but he just manages to put on the pressure just enough to knock down the airfield before any real successful bombing runs can be executed. Power is out once again, and these hammer tanks, are they going to get trapped? Vindicator finds 1 kill. The MCV finds another kill. opShijiao can body block. No, he's going to let the hammer tank escape, get away from that MCV, but there's no bullfrogs here to stop these Vindicators, and the hammer tanks get chipped away at 1 by 1, and now there's only 1 hammer tank left. The Vindicators and the Riptides can now clear it out. Oh, hammer tank gets the heal from the Peacekeeper, and okay, there is going to be the last hammer tank going down. Bullfrogs have been constructed. Reactor gets sold off by opShijiao, and a dangerous situation for both players. The Terror Drone trying to go for the infect on that Harvester, or probably just stasis that Harvester for a little while. Harlen has been fully reset. He's got very few tools to work with, but at least also the allied player has taken a bit of damage. That Terror Drone leading the Vindicator on a merry chase down along the southern edge of the island. opShijiao diverts his Vindicator, changes the return to base order, and does avoid the Bullfrogs. A dangerous dance for both players, and that hammer tank can heal up seemingly an infinite number of times off of an observation post. 2 hammer tanks moving forward. A third is joining the fight. Conscript brought along as well. Even a barracks would have really changed this up for Harlen. Another hammer tank goes down. The Riptide's going to be wasting some shots on those Bullfrogs, but there's no Crusher Crane for this Soviet player, so the damage is essentially permanent on a lot of these units. Hammer tanks, of course, do have the leech beam. They will be able to use that to regain some health. Conscript is here. Bullfrog rolls up, and where did this hammer tank come from? I'm not sure how he got so close, so deep behind enemy lines. Bullfrogs have now closed the distance on these Vindicators, going to be chasing the Vindicators away, and the hammer tank numbers are back up to a healthy place. Vindicators are going to have to try and trade out their lives. They go for the Bullfrogs. They leave the hammer tanks, so opShijiao believes he can deal with the hammer tanks. He can't deal with the Bullfrogs, which is a curious case indeed, and that's going to be the GG as opShijiao kills the anti-air, but not the stuff that's on the ground blasting him. opShijiao almost eliminated a dozen times and almost victorious half a dozen more. opShijiao not able to clinch it there on Fire Island, but giving Harlen a run for his money. And that will send us to Battle Base Beta for our next AVS. Third refinery coming up here for Harlen. opShijiao goes deep into the middle of the map, drops a multi-gunner turret, a power plant, and a barracks, and then backs off. He does want that third refinery. He wants a little bit more eco than just 2 refineries and an oil derrick. But I do appreciate that opShijiao, pre-3 minutes, has already killed Harlen's oil derrick. Great move to help keep that Soviet player corralled. You don't want the Soviet player getting massively ahead on eco when a Soviet player is as good as Harlen. Middle of the map is about to be a little bit more open, with the leech beams eliminating that building. And these bears and tanks are kind of baiting these IFVs. One of the IFVs does finally go down. A little bit of harassment happening on the north side of the map. It is going to be Apollo's versus Migs. Multi-gunner turret on the ground is going to make sure that it's a win for the allied player. And meanwhile, back in the middle, it's going to be hammer tanks repositioning into the middle of the map. Guardian tanks trying to eliminate those bears. Peacekeepers, not a lot of damage output, but they can help with the tanks when they're shrunk down. We don't really have any jabs to add into that defense, that anti-air and anti-tank defense for opShijiao. It is just a slow burn game here for these players. Double multi-gunner turret gets eliminated. Cryocopters move forward. Hammer tanks have a really good position against the choke. Would love to see some toxins come in, but it's going to be a cryo shot instead on the other side. Hammer tank's going to be repositioning. They've got a great choke against all of these Guardians, but the cryocopters are going to be shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Terror drone is here. The Guardian's starting to get unclogged, but it's still only 2 or 3 of them on the front line versus all of these hammer tanks. It's like 8 hammer tanks firing at one time versus 1 Guardian tank on the allied side of things. Twin blades show up, but twin blades get shoved away by those IFVs. Vindicators come through. They split their bombs on a couple of targets. Vindicators get pushed back. A couple of them going down. Cryocopters trying to dance. The Guardian tanks keep getting whittled away. One by one, they get picked apart, and now their war factory is gone. No more repairs for those Guardian tanks. Peacekeepers are going to try and help push these tanks back, and it's still a fight tank against tank, but the allied player has lost so many tanks in the pre-game rattling of these armies as they clashed again and again. Harlen has the better tank numbers, but they keep getting shrunk down. The Guardian tanks able to eat up tank after tank. One of these Guardians even going heroic. Another Guardian so low on health, but still surviving and getting off a couple of extra shots. Finally, 2 more Guardians go down, but they've got a multi-gunner turret to cover their exchange, and Harlen technically still has the better tank numbers, but when one of your tanks is a heroic Guardian and he's got air support, he's got multi-gunner turrets, you're losing the battle even if you're winning the battle. Heroic gets transferred over to the double-barrel hammer tank, and he will now escape. 4 cryocopters are here, but MiGs are pretty deep on enemy territory. They get one of the cryocopters. Apollo's now going to be defending them. Cryo shot going to be coming in, and it's going to be forcing those hammer tanks back. The shrink actually going to be allowing some of those hammer tanks to survive. They need to be very careful as to whether or not they actually dive into the ice, into the ice-cold snow of the allied player. Reinforcements do get dealt with by those Guardian tanks, but it's a 1-for-1 on the tank count in that exchange. The freezing a Guardian tank, and the Hammer's able to deal with it. Hammer tanks step forward. The Guardians are there to meet them, but the Hammer tanks win that fight 99 times out of 100, and it's 99 times here because they are winning versus those Guardian tanks. Easy mode. 1 MiG is left, and opShijiao has been defeated. Harlen gets 2 wins in a row, but they're hard-fought victories here for Harlen. And now that sends us to Deep Sea. 3 hammer tanks, 4 bullfrogs, terror drone, and another reinforcing hammer tank moving into position. opShijiao has a lot of pressure that he needs to deal with. Cryocopters are here. There's usually a good combination of riptides and multi-gunner IFVs, but in this case, is OP just dead to this? OP might just be dead to this. Vindicators do manage to get a couple of good bombing runs. They clean up a couple of those bullfrogs. The other bullfrogs are going to be pushing away those cryocopters, and the terror drone finds the lockdown on those guardian tanks. So the guardian tanks, which could be providing a ton of support for this airfield, instead just keep getting stasised by this terror drone, locked down and kept out of the fight. Bullfrogs still not able to find an angle to engage on these cryocopters, and the hammer tanks now getting separated out from the bullfrog and from the terror drone are sort of just trapped. No rescue for them. The guardian tanks will be able to clean up these toxins to get dropped. Nicely done there by Harlen to try and get a little bit of value back at the end of this fight. But guardian tanks can now clean up both of those hammers. And okay, that is the end of that. No, the harvester gets infected by a terror drone as well. And I don't know if it's worth it to shrink down the harvester in this case to get it to the airfield faster. Oh, that harvester right on the edge of death, but the terror drone does get cleaned out. Athena Cannon's out onto the field, and that is the worst place and time for the Athena Cannon to pop out. It's going to get jumped on basically immediately. At least the terror drone does get frozen down. The cryocopters need to save themselves. They cannot go down. Well, maybe you could give away one of the cryocopters, but you don't want to be giving away a bunch of them. Tank's going to be moving into position. Second Athena Cannon steps out. Doesn't get any crushes, though. That terror drone causing so many problems for this allied army. And this exchange could have gone so much better for opShijiao if he had been able to actually kill off some of those critical units, but Harlen just finds the value no matter what. A Mirage tank comes out, gets only 2 shots off, and gets eliminated. Even with so little units still on this attack, Harlen still finds massive damage versus this high-tech allied player, forced to sell off a power plant in the face of all of this. Harlen has the better economy, and he's still getting the better of these exchanges, blasting the cryocopters, taking down the Mirage tanks, the Athena Cannons, the Guardians, the IFVs. Everything gets eliminated for the allied player, and it's from just this paltry group of Soviet units. opShijiao gets overwhelmed completely by Harlen. A massacre there by Harlen that he should not have been able to win that, at least not like that. But Harlen just has such dominant control of these games. And that will do it for this video, for this game. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And this is Sybert, signing out.